and we're talking Dead Ringers, directed by David Cronenberg from 1988. A little synopsis rundown. The movie opens up with identical twins, Elliot and Beverly Mantle, leaving their brownstone home in Toronto, Canada in the 50s, and they're discussing human sex and the inconvenience of sex, as children do. They ask a neighborhood girl if she would like to have sex with them in a bathtub for an experiment, and are told to get fucked. This basically sets the tone for the rest of the film. We jump ahead to the 60s. It's Cambridge, Massachusetts, and where the brothers are now med students and are already inventing new devices for the examination of women's bodies, instruments that do not take into account the comfort of their patients' bodies. We are then shown that this strange invention of theirs is reworked, rejiggered a bit, and they are now on their way to being top-notch gynecologists and begin the practice of examining women's vaginas. Truly, this is a movie for the people. Mm-hmm. With that preamble out of the way, the rest of the story is that of the two brothers now back in Toronto in the late 80s. An actress has come into their practice. Claire Nouveau, Beverly, the sweet brother of the twins, examines her and discovers she has a trifurcated cervix, a rare and unusual formation that makes having children impossible. Beverly excitedly tells his hotshot dick brother, Elliot, who does the fun granting face side of their stuff, about this discovery, and Elliot just sees this as another potential conquest and also a bit of fame more for their scientific endeavors. We are then introduced to the mental method of dating. Essentially, they hit up on women who are unaware that there are two of them, and then they switch out back and forth just for kicks. This has been going on for a number of years, we find out, and it would seem that Nouveau is the one that is going to turn Beverly around, though, about this whole game, as he starts really falling for her and having feelings toward her. Nouveau has a bit of a prescription drug problem, though, and Elliot feels that she's just kind of there working the brother for drugs, and he's more than willing to go along with it because it kind of amuses him. And so Beverly kind of winds up also kind of falling into this prescription drug problem after a particularly nasty argument where Nouveau starts questioning the mental state and identity and sexual preferences of poor Beverly. Eventually, the gig is up, and Nouveau discovers that she's been had by these two brothers, and she confronts them, dumps Beverly. Elliot's indifferent to this, but Beverly is really devastated. This kicks off a downward spiral for Beverly. Nouveau and Beverly do reconcile, and things look like they're going to play out just lovely in this David Cronenberg movie, but that's just not going to be the case. Claire leaves town to work on a film, and Beverly is not able to handle this loneliness anymore. It seems the drift between Beverly and his brother Elliot has become insurmountable, and this becomes actually upsetting to the usually cool Elliot. Bev delves into depression, more drug abuse, and then just madness when he thinks that Claire is having an affair on him. There's talk of mutant women, abnormal genitals, stalking the landscape. He goes to an industrial artist out of the 80s school of edgy artwork and has him draft up some gynecological instruments to deal with these mutant women. It goes so far as Bev is actually working in an operation, and he's going to start using these tools on a patient. But before that happens, he has a kind of drug freak out, and this kind of exposes his drug problem, and him and Elliot now have both lost their ability to practice their medical stuff. Elliot now realizes the neglect he has had toward his brother has had this effect, and now he figures he's got to help him out. So this brings about some rehabilitation, and this doesn't go well at all, and things just keep going down a dark road. And yeah, that's kind of Dead Ringers. Have you seen many David Cronenberg movies, RJ?
Quite a few, actually.
Oh.
Quite a few.
Yeah.
He's, as you've mentioned, a good old Canadian boy. So I like that. Mm-hmm. Not that would matter. But Cronenberg's the king daddy of body horror and flesh.
And flesh.
I think some people have called him Granddaddy Flesh. So, yeah, Cronenberg is awesome. I love him. His movies are wicked good. So, yes, I have seen quite a few.
Oh, yeah, I mean, for me, I try to think of what the first Cronenberg stuff I would have watched, and I think the earliest thing I would have watched before knowing who he was probably The Fly, when it was on Showcase or whatever, and being like, what the hell is this type of thing? arms being broken in half and weird vomit stuff going on, really like off-putting stuff. And then like just like being in Canada, you get kind of the David Cronenberg beatdown, because there's like only like a handful of like big name directors in at least in like English Canada that you hear about, and it's kind of like it's David Cronenberg and Adam McGowan, especially through the 90s, and then like to a lesser degree like Guy Maddin or something like that. But so I kind of like went through a phase where I was just like watching all of David Cronenberg's movies on VHS, renting whatever they had, and they usually did actually have a pretty good selection. You could kind of piece together from all the video stores. I think the only one that I ever had any problem getting a hold of was, I think, Rabid. But yeah, I mean, finding like They Came From Within, aka Shivers and stuff like that, watching all that. But yeah, I mean, I remember at one point renting Dead Ringers from Blockbuster, I guess, and like I thought this movie was like absolutely amazing, and like I think it was like, it kind of like felt like this like light year jump from like the stuff he was making at the beginning of his career, and kind of like in the mid 80s, kind of like where you have like Videodrome, The Dead Zone, and The Fly. And then he finally kind of like jumps in and is like, I'm going to make like a real movie now, which like I don't feel that way now, because I think that between Videodrome, The Fly, and Dead Ringers, I think it's like this amazing trilogy of movies that are just like absolutely phenomenal. Because yeah, I love Dead Ringers to bits. This movie, like watching it this time, the one thing I'm disappointed by actually is that we were doing our show this particular week, because in a month or so Scream Factory is putting out the Blu-ray of this, and I was like, oh man, I would have loved to be able to talk about that in HD and everything, because like the DVD that we each own is it's like the older release that's like actually been out of print for years and was going for like $100 or something like that. And like it looks fine, like it's not a bad DVD by any means. It's not like and there's like the old Criterion, which is like 20 years old now almost, which I don't have access to. But yeah, so we were watching the old Morgan Creek one. But yeah, like the thing I was really watching was just like how amazing the technical aspects are as far as like doing the split screen stuff with like with the Jeremy Irons characters, because like it's just like it's still amazing to me. Like I think that actually, because the one director that came to mind when I was watching this movie was Christopher Nolan.
Oh yeah.
Watching this, just because like there's like the obvious thing where it's like spoilers. If you're talking about the movie The Prestige, that's a movie where you had sort of a similar thing going on. But I found that in The Prestige, it's like really, it's not very like tricky. There's like no way that like you ever really wonder like how did they have the two brothers at the same time. There's nothing like that. It's like that impressive. Whereas like it's almost like Cronenberg is like marveling in the fact of like how well done the dual screening is with the two. And there's like the added aspect of just like how incredible the Jeremy Irons performance is in this movie. It's just like there is like, you literally think that there's two people on the screen. Like you really, I don't think you could realize that, oh, this is one man. And it's like, no, there's two brothers happening. And like, what a credit to both. And like, actually, I mean, I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself, because like with Cronenberg, I mean, one of the themes that like kind of is throughout his whole like first like 12 movies that he made was this relationship of technology and like the body. And I actually found that this movie kind of like typifies that in some ways, because it's this idea of like film technology and in relation to like the body, which is like Jeremy Irons, and like how it's like kind of this like perfect blending of like those things and like creating something completely new, which is like they basically fabricated an entire different person to basically pull this off. And it's all just like movie magic or whatever, just like at such like a high level. And that's like 1988. Like, cause I'm pretty sure that like split screen still like doesn't look even this good still. Like I'll be curious to see how this looks in HD and whether or not it kind of shows the flaws more. But so I'm kind of like, well, maybe that'll be a bad thing, because you can maybe see like the colors might be a little bit off or whatever when they do it that way. But on this DVD, it still looks absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it looks great. Like I was watching this with Andrea, and I mentioned that, and she's like, well, how did they do that? She's like, was there a dude in a green suit? And I was like, this is way before that. I was like, I don't know how they did it. I think it's like imposed on like the film. Is it like put on top of each other, like imposed on it, or I don't know how it's executed, but it looks like flawless. Yeah. And the other thing too is like Jeremy Irons is fucking amazing. Like his timing and like the how he kind of interacts with that stuff. Like I don't know if they even if they had like a dude that he could bounce lines off of, like he had to get his timing from his first performance to his second. Like you know what I mean?
Right.
Like yeah, like it's all amazing, Jer.
Yeah, I didn't. I vaguely remember because I didn't watch it this time, but like in the behind the scenes, like or in some behind the scenes like show off of like how they did this, like it's very. It seems very simple what they did, but like they did it really really well. Because usually they other movies have done the same thing where like they've shot scenes doubling over, and then recomposited them. But in this, it's like the seams you don't see them. Like I can't tell. Like or actually I get so involved in the story, because I like the story so much that I don't notice those seams, I guess, too, which is another credit to the actual storytelling of the movie. Yeah, actually, the one thing, too, is I was reading a trivia fact was I guess like Jeremy Irons actually had 2 trailers depending on which character he was playing initially, which is like kind of a peculiar thing. But apparently, I guess like at one point he just decided that this is kind of stupid, and like he thought like it would add to like his own confusion about who's who, like which character he was doing, which is sort of something that the movie does start playing with, and like you really kind of start forgetting about who's who by the end, because like fortunately they do have names. I was reading one person's review where they're like, I kind of got confused, but I'm terrible with names. I'm like, that's fair, but I mean they're very different characters though. Like it's just like the way they play it, like there's just like there are little subtle things that he does that are
I think he's great at that. Like I didn't have, there's only a few moments where I couldn't tell them apart. Like for the most part, like just in his expression or his poise, like sometimes they do the hair a little different, but like even so, like it just is the way his face is, man. Like sometimes you can tell it's like, okay, well this is him and this is the other one, and the way the cadence to his like speak or sometimes as well. So
yeah, I mean there's like, and there's even like the next level too of where there's the times where Elliot is playing Beverly, and you can tell.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, where it's like, okay, so now like not only has he had to figure out how he plays Beverly and how he plays Elliot, but now he has to actually figure out how would Elliot do his brother and how would Elliot do Beverly. It's quite the feat.
That's next level shit. I think that's what the kids say.
Yo.
YOLO.
Yeah.
It's next level shit. Yeah. No, he's absolutely fucking incredible in this. And like just watching it, this is like another one of those movies where I don't even take notes almost, because you get so caught up into it and it's just so well done. All Jeremy Irons stuff, all of the direction, like there's so much nice symmetry in all the shots between them and like stuff like that. It's just it's just a real well put together movie, Jer.
Nice little package.
Nice little package there for you.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll just kind of run through my notes here of what I've got.
Sure.
Yeah, so that Howard Shore score shows up again. Right. It's sort of like after The Fly, and it's a lot more dialed back from that super operatic music that we have in The Fly. But it's like, again, like super well suited. Him and Cronenberg work really well together. I think they still like are collaborating on music to this day. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't like, I don't think it's like a super standout score by any means, but I think it's like it's perfectly suited to the material. It's just sort of like this like somber thing that just kind of runs with the story. Yeah, I think like the thing that draws me into this movie immediately is just like those anatomical block print illustrations with the opening credits.
Oh yeah,
I'm such a sucker for that stuff. The girlfriend, she has like tons of books of all this stuff, and just seeing it show up in movies always makes me happy. I'm not so much a fan of that red. It looks kind of a little odd to me, but I mean,
I was gonna ask, do you know what that's about?
What
the red, like not the red, but like the very ceremonial gowns that they wear that are like with the headpieces. Because Andrea looked at me, she was like, "What is that?" And I was like, "I don't know." I was like, "I think it's just a Cronenberg thing. I don't know."
I think it's a style. Yeah, I actually think it's just like a design thing. You have to ask Carol Spear, I guess. That's his that's his like production designer for
Okay.
forever and ever. And yeah, like so there's like those weird flourishes that are in that movie that like just I don't know, they make the movie definitely iconic because like I don't think you can I think you can pretty well like see a screen grab of like that red outfit being put on, the weird like
Yeah.
I don't even know what you call it. It's almost like religious looking. Like it's like and it's like a high priests of stuff like that. It's really peculiar. Because I don't know if there's a reference point for that. I've never seen it in my travels through gynecological hospitals, women getting inseminated and whatnot.
Yeah, but you don't creep around them as much as you're supposed to.
I guess
Or
not.
as well, not supposed to.
This time out though, I didn't realize this was based on a book. Nor did I realize, or I think I maybe had read it at one point, but I didn't retain that this was actually based on like a real life story, kind of. Like there was there was two twin gynecologist brothers named Cyril and Stuart Marcus, and they like both died like of like they were like had barbiturates in their system, and like one had overdosed and the other one died like right afterwards, and their bodies were discovered in like one of the brothers' apartments in New York in like 75 or 77 or something like that. And so there's
Weird,
and then there's a book that's based on them that was originally called Twins, and then I think and then that's the basis of this, and then it just got I think now it's just called Dead Ringers. But.
Yeah, I think Twins works better for the Danny DeVito stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, Dead Ringers has a little bit more panaz.
Yeah, I had to fight the impulse to just write a synopsis out for Twins and just use that for this movie.
You could have done it, man. I would have liked it.
Yeah, you'd have
The
appreciated
fan would have liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the co-writer on this was David Cronenberg wrote it with a fella who also wrote the movie Body Parts, which is also an Eric Red film. Which, if you'd listened to the last School, you would have heard me heaping praise upon his film Bad Moon.
Ooh, okay.
And also of note is the same guy. It's like Norman something. He also worked on an iteration of an American Psycho movie that was going to be made that Cronenberg was at one point attached to, which goes along with like every cool director at one point was attached to do an American Psycho. It seems.
Yeah. Well, it's because people like the content, I guess.
They like violent sex shit. Actually, Cronenberg would have been pretty well suited to doing American Psycho in a lot of ways. But hey, anyway, so Toronto, it's so nice to see Toronto as itself. That's a nice staple of Cronenberg's movies because between Videodrome and The Fly, Toronto is the city.
Well, I think good stuff is not only do they take place there, but he films there, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like a lot of other places is actually like filmed in Toronto or Vancouver, but it's like Dayton, Ohio,
New York,
or something like that.
My favorite is always the I think it's in Rumble in the Bronx where it's Vancouver as New York,
and
it's just like that. Nope, that's not New York because like they're out on the bay and stuff like that. And it's like no, that I know where that is. That's like West Vancouver.
You're like I've been there, man.
North Van's over there, and it's like no, that's not. Nope, there's no like. It's not coastal at all, like New York City, but that's neither here nor there.
No, I like that too.
Yeah.
And people might be like, well, enough with the Canada stuff. But hey, man, we're proud to be Canadian, and this is the first one there, and David Cronenberg seems like he's proud too. So
he's one of our greatest exports.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so this movie like kicks off with like so many good lines.
Oh yeah,
that little girl just saying "fuck off, you freaks." And you don't even know what fuck is.
I was gonna say that is how Canadian kids act, like pretty routinely. So I heard two kids doing that outside today when I was walking home. So weird.
Yeah. Well, why were you asking them to have sex with you in a bathtub?
No,
RJ?
I overheard them saying this to each other. It's different.
It's different this time.
It's different.
And then when we get to the Cambridge and the one instructor's coming going around checking out what they're doing, and he like takes out their tool and it's like, well, what is that? And he's like, oh, we had it made. And then it's like, well, it might work for a cadaver, but it wouldn't work for a living person. It's like, ugh.
That's something I've heard you say before when you're talking to your buddy Rob Z. But it's a whole different thing that you're talking about.
Yeah. And then the next line I wrote, and this is like all in the first 8 minutes of the movie, right when he's examining Claire, and he's like, oh, everything seems to be in the right place. A couple of extra ones that shouldn't be.
Yeah, and she's like, "You're joking, right?" And he's
Yeah.
like, "No,
No.
no, I'm serious."
Yeah, no, it's like when I was watching Videodrome like a month ago or so, like that movie's got so many awesome lines too. And it's like I don't think Cronenberg gets enough credit for his like great turns of phrases. Like I don't know, it's not like his characters are like talking like in this like super realistic way, but they're talking the way that like I wish characters talked like in movies, where they're smart and they say just like things that you wouldn't normally say in reality because otherwise things are boring. I don't know. That's always a weird criticism people direct toward movies with stylized dialogue. Like that's a bad thing.
Yeah, it's what do you do, huh? When you're talking to your gynecology buddies, don't you drop some hot knowledge just like them?
All the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So yeah, one of the other things I always remember with this movie is a friend of mine, Chris. Apparently he took a first date to this movie in theater, not knowing, apparently. Just being like, the new Cronenberg's in town. Time to go check it out.
Go check it out. There's worse things. I had a high school teacher who always said that he took a date to Deliverance, and then she never called him again. So,
oh,
but I mean, maybe it was just because Deliverance isn't like that great.
It's pretty good.
It's okay.
It's pretty good.
It's okay.
You're wrong. So what did Andrea think?
She actually really liked this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, I think you'll like this one. And she's like, you've been saying that all month, which is a little unfair because she's been having to deal with my random ghoul school watchings. So actually some of them have hit. But no, yeah, she thought this one was really good. I think for the first half hour, she was kind of like diddling around. You know what I mean. She was fiddling about. Is that a better way to put that? Anyways, and then like about a half hour in, then she kind of got dialed into it, and she was invested, and she watched it out the whole way. And by the end, she was pretty sad the way it ended, you know. So I was like, well, it did it then. The movie succeeded because I don't think you're supposed to feel good at the end of this movie. No, yeah, she really liked it, and I was like, yeah, fucking right. I was like, I did it. I got her.
You did it.
So I was like, do you want to watch a Videodrome next? She's like, sure. I was like, yes. Because that's not until like 300 in the Criterion, right?
Oh yeah, that's a long ways away.
So might as well just bump that one out here, anyways.
We'll have stopped doing the show long before then.
Oh yeah, like we're lucky if next week even happens.
Yeah. Oh yes. Also, there's the talk of enthusiastic periods.
Yeah, I think I was quoting that myself today to Andrea.
Yeah.
And she's like, stop saying that. I was like, but it's true. Yeah. Well, that's all fun. Hey, Jarrett, do you like to bite fleshy conjoined twins on the conjoinment?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yep.
I like that.
Yeah. So, I don't know if you want to talk maybe more about like the whole thing of like body horror or whatever. It's like, I mean, so it's like, it's one of those things that I feel like very frustrated about because it seems like it's such a lazy thing that people just say to like toss it out there. And everyone knows David Cronenberg does it. And then now like every time a movie comes along that deals with body horror, it's just like, oh, body horror in Cronenberg. But it's just like, it seems so reductive to me. Like, so I mean, in this movie, like, I don't even know if it kind of taps into that though, but I feel like it's not really body horror other than like in the most passing ways. Like I don't think it's like a great example of it because it seems like it's far more about like identity and stuff like that. But then obviously there is like bits where like I think when Claire's talking about like about having a child and this idea of like, well, you could always adopt if you really want to raise a child, and she's like, no, it has to be part of my body, which I think is like super creepy, but like there's like something there to it, which I think is something that Cronenberg's really good at, is hitting upon these like these ways of how people's bodies work or shouldn't work. And going from there, because I mean, like, yeah, I mean, like, I guess like the body horror thing comes from the fact that, well, here, like, instead of like in these kind of fictionalized versions, like in his previous movies, which kind of are more like sci-fi horror things, this movie actually is dealing with like a real profession that actually exists in the world, but like this sort of heightened, strange version of it. Yeah.
No, I agree with you, man. Like, I feel it. I feel you, dog.
Okay.
I don't have much to say. Like, it's kind of not trying to like not talk about it, but this movie's really good, and it's like there's certain things it's like I don't even know how to like talk about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean, man? But I agree with you with the body horror thing. I think that's mostly just coming out of The Fly, and then when you have like a vagina in a chest, like in Videodrome, it's like, how do you talk about that? Like, what do you use to describe that? It's like, I guess, body horror,
Yeah.
or just chest vagina.
Well, I mean, Videodrome is like essentially it's an action movie at the end of the day. Like I think that's like its appeal. And it's got this like backdrop of like sci-fi stuff in there. And The Fly, I mean, it's this like monster movie, but it's like also it's like a romance, which like kind of like a lot of monster movies essentially are. And Dead Ringers, I mean, it's kind of like it's a movie about like siblings, but like it's like it's a particular type of relationship though that like not many people know about, like because people aren't twins usually. I mean, because I mean with your like brothers and sisters, I mean you're like separate entities, and
We sometimes merge into a mass, quite like they do in Dead Ringers,
or society,
in society, yeah.
the shunting.
Yeah, we often dance to 60s soda pop music with the respected other's girlfriend or
Right.
you know whoever they're occupied with at the time.
Ah,
So
and I'm the creep.
yeah, you are a creep. There's nothing wrong with being a family, Jarrett. I think that's what Dead Ringers is all about.
It's like that X-Files episode, Home.
Home, it is like that one,
Yeah.
but not like that one.
Mm-hmm.
Not me, but I mean, yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so I just realized too when we were watching this movie, it's like, hey, this is like 2 movies in a row that are about destructive relationships and drug addiction. Because that was Sid and Nancy.
Yeah, but one of these movies is really good and the other one isn't.
And this is very true.
This is very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why is this movie so much better than Sid and Nancy?
Because that movie stinks.
Well, okay.
And that movie's annoying.
Yeah. Well, here's your opportunity to talk about why that is.
Well, I've already talked about Sid and Nancy, but I don't know. It's kind of like what I was touching on before. I think there's so much stuff in this movie that's just done so well. Like you were saying, the dialogue is actually just really good. Like kind of how you're saying sometimes it doesn't seem natural, but I mean for the characters it does. Right? Like we might not talk like that, but I'm pretty sure these guys actually do talk like that. It does feel natural. And I was saying, Jeremy Irons is great. I think the way David Cronenberg sets all this stuff up is just amazing to watch. Like the first hour and then like kind of that slow burning down spiral that happens, and a lot of stuff like even though I had seen this before, when you're watching it and you're like, oh, it's gonna take that turn where he loses it and he makes all these weird hook claw sex tools, like you know it's coming, but I feel like it still comes like kind of as like not like a surprise, but it's upsetting. Like it shakes you a little bit when you see all that stuff. It's just a really effective movie in that way, I guess, because even if you know what's coming, it's still super like fresh. And I think especially the ending, because like I said before, I think the ending is super sad. And I love it. And just like, you know, when he like wakes up and when Bev wakes up and he's like saying Elle's name, it's like the saddest shit I've ever fucking seen.
Well, yeah, that scene, like just like how he plays it, because he knows like the way he does it, because there's a bit where it's like he wakes up and he's like actively not looking into that corner of the room. Yeah. And he just keeps repeating the name, but he like is everywhere he looks. He's the only place he doesn't ever look though is exactly at the table where his disemboweled brother lies. And yeah, it just plays out, and it's like
it's fucking heartbreaking,
and it's great too, because like I mean, there's one thing that people probably accuse Cronenberg of is like not really having a lot of restraint. Like usually it's like he relishes in like the gore and the splat and the guts and whatnot. Apparently there was like a second dream sequence that was actually supposed to be in the movie too. That was not, I don't think it was ever filmed, but it was scripted involving a parasitic twin coming out of Bev. But he cut it out, and it's like, yeah, because that's like, that would have taken it into like the comfortable territory that I think Cronenberg enjoys. And so like you never actually see Elliot on the table. You never see that. It's always like it's just in the distance, which is just like far more like off-putting because it's in this Cronenberg world.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I don't know if I even agree like with the restraint thing, because I think he does show restraint. Like I think if he was like wasn't, I think at the end would be like that Bev had stitched L into his body again or
Right.
something like
Yeah.
that. Like
No,
so
yeah.
like because I think that's an easy out. Like I don't know, maybe I'm just expecting that because I'm like a weirdo or something, but I think that would be like the easy way to end it. So
Exactly.
I think he did the right thing.
No, for sure. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Is he he does like show restraint in this movie. Like I think that's like why, I mean, I would say it's like probably his most like mature movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Because like because when you look at his like filmography, which I was doing, because like I was remembering like, I mean, yeah, he starts with Shivers, and then you have Rabid, The Brood, Scanners, and then like I think he makes that kind of first initial leap into Videodrome where he's got like some real money and some real scale. And I mean that movie is just like there's like some awesome levels of just splat and stuff like that. And then like you have the Dead Zone, which I think is like kind of his first like movement toward like refining stuff. And then there's The Fly, which like is like probably him at his like horror best. And then he does Dead Ringers, which like is kind of is actually a lot closer to the stuff that he went on to do. But there's something really missing after Dead Ringers for me, because from there he does Naked Lunch. And then there's his M movie, which has got Jeremy Irons in it, that I've never actually seen. There's Crash, which I've only seen the one time, and man, I don't remember being like super great, but maybe it holds up better. But then there's Existence, which is just him doing Videodrome again, and then there's Spider, which kind of goes back into his one of his other pet interests of just like memory and mind and identity and whatnot. And then then it's all your History of Violence, which
all his Vigo stage.
The Vigo stage, yeah, his trilogy of Vigo. I'll throw out there. I'm not a fan of History of Violence at all.
That's weird.
But I do like me some Eastern Promises.
You know, I find a lot of people are divided on those. Like they like one or not the other. I like them both. I think they're both pretty sweet.
Yeah. I think what really, there's something like about there's an artificiality to our History of Violence that I don't really care for. And William Hurt's performance in History of Violence is like one of the all-time worst performances, I think.
Hey, Joey.
Oh, yeah.
Joey Tomatoes.
Yeah,
that's what he does in that, right?
Horrible. And then like Dangerous Method, and Cosmopolis, I think, has a really bad rep. That movie's like not bad at all, but people really seem to want to hate that. I don't know if it's because they don't like Robert Pattinson, but
I was gonna say, is that the only reason they don't like it?
Because
I've never seen that actually, but I know say it's good.
Yeah, I don't think it's a terrible movie at all. I think it's like fine. And then Maps to the Stars, I've owned that on Blu-ray, which I didn't see. That's a movie that I didn't even realize existed until I saw it at Walmart, and I didn't know it was David Cronenberg until like I went home and was like saw something like, hey, David Cronenberg's movie just came out on Blu-ray. I'm like, what? Like a David Cronenberg movie came out, and I had no idea till it hit like Walmart shelves. It's just ridiculous. But like so for me, like Dead Ringers really hits like that was like kind of like probably his high point for me of like his filmmaking. And then after that, I don't know, he kind of didn't really make stuff that I connected to a lot. And in that Eastern Promises is just like, I think it's just like a good movie that like isn't particularly Cronenbergish, other than like his love of violence or his obsession with violence. I don't think he loves violence. He doesn't like guns. But he does love guns, I think is how it goes. Something like that. He's one of those, like, it's always weird. I get confused about how my directors...
David Lynch doesn't like guns.
I don't know. David Lynch might love his guns too. I don't know. People, like, there's always like a weird story about like some like John Woo's never fired a gun and stuff like that. And I can't remember. I think David Cronenberg actually was like a really big gun fan. But I might be completely flat out wrong on that one. And maybe he hates, or he's frightened. That's like the scariest thing in the world to him. But I think he's a gun fan.
Yeah, I have no idea. Yeah. I think you made all that stuff up. So I don't believe a word you said.
No one will ever know. So I guess like the other thing too, like just like thinking about like using Sid and Nancy is sort of like a way to like compare and contrast. So like, 'cause like Sid and Nancy is another movie that's like, it's got this like really big like actor role in it that people like, whenever they think about the movie, they kind of celebrate Gary Oldman's performance. But like, I don't know, like I guess like maybe it's unfair to Gary Oldman to like compare it to what Jeremy Irons did here in Dead Ringers. But it's just like, like it's a standout performance. Like it's a highlight.
It's the best acting we've seen so far.
Oh yeah, there's like
And
I don't even know what's coming up ahead that's going to even like be on the same level.
now this might be a shot out to lunch, Jarrett, but Dead Ringers might even be the best movie we've watched so far.
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, it's a I don't know. It would be a toss up for me between the Silence of the Lambs in some ways. And I was funny because I was looking at both posters and they're both faces and they both came out within a few years. So, I mean, it kind of speaks to also maybe my taste of like these late 80s, early 90s movies. And also like the kind of period of time when I would have watched them was around the same. So there could be like a bit of nostalgia at work for that. But yeah.
There's no nostalgia for me because I watched Dead Ringers as an adult, not as a little chum, and I think it's just as good. I hold it up there. Like I think on my ranked list, I have Seven Samurai and Seventh Seal, both at the top with Dead Ringers like in there. But to be honest, I compare all three of them basically as sharing the top spot because it's like, how do you put one over the other, Jer? It's just because it's a number. But if they could all be number one, they would be.
Oh,
and then number two would be Walkabout, and number three would be Salo.
Yeah.
And all my favorite movies.
Your classics.
Yeah, all the hits.
Oh, I'm trying to remember. No, there's one amazing performance coming up, and it's going to be Kurtwood Smith as Clarence J. Boddicker.
Ooh, that is pretty
good. I think that will be that'll be tough to top.
Yeah, are we gonna skip Summertime and just go right to that?
No.
Nah.
Yeah.
Well, I had to say it because people out there demand RoboCop. People love RoboCop.
People love the RoboCop. People will find out all about RoboCop in a couple episodes. They got to finish this episode though. Hey RJ, how much do twin escorts cost?
It depends on how long you keep them and what kind of things you're doing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the flat rate is like a half quarter, like $250 a piece, so about $500 for the pair. But again, that's like at a 40-minute premium.
Wonderful. Oh, and for another bit of trivia, apparently Robert De Niro was at one point considered to play, and apparently he didn't want to do it because of like the weirdness of the role, which I believe I refer to as he pussed out.
Yeah, and now he's doing movies like fucking Bad Grandpa. It's like, and look at Jeremy Irons. He's fucking Alfred now.
I mean, just think about like, this movie would be terrible with De Niro.
Yeah, it would be fucking horrible.
I just like De Niro is just not a Cronenberg guy.
Well, I think this movie is like great for two reasons: Cronenberg and Jeremy Irons, and they fucking mesh completely perfectly. I think if either one of them was absent, I don't think it would be what it is. So,
wow.
I mean,
that's probably true of
obvious.
that's true of a lot of movies. If you take out any one of those like key things, it's like the movie falls apart and it's a piece of junk.
Hey Jarrett, I think if like Tyler Perry wrote the script for this, it would be like a way different movie.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
I can't disagree.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed this, but like this movie is pretty well all interior shots too. Like there's only like two.
There's one outside at the end, or there's two maybe
at the very beginning when the young Beverly and Elliot are walking down out on the street, and then basically it's all interiors until the very end when like Beverly's kind of like gone out to meet Claire, and he's just like wandering around dejected and sad. And there's like that's it though, and it's like those scenes are kind of like fresh air and trees, because then it's like back into these houses and back into these like weird like perfectly designed like sets. Like that's the other thing too, this movie's got some really great set design. Like those are like really great rooms, like his office and Elliot's apartment, or the twin brothers' apartment, and just like the use of like reds and blues, which are kind of hilariously outlined by the DVD that we were watching, where it's got like both sides of Jeremy Irons' face, and one half's blue and one half's red, and they're like all like kind of like torn apart or whatever. It's just like so on the nose.
It's a little on the nose, but I mean it's charming at the same time.
A little bit of charm there, I guess.
It's a little charming. So I was going to say, when we were watching this movie, there were two things that happened with Bev and Elliot where Andrea looked at me and she's like, oh my God, because they are literally things I have done and continue to do in real life.
Are you talking about like medical instrument sex acts?
Well, yeah, but like it's not as prevalent as these other two. So these were the two that I had to make note of. Right before Bev finds the artist has stolen his instruments, he's like walking, and then he passes a bush, and he just kind of turns his head a little bit to his shoulder, and he just pukes really quick in the bush, and then he keeps on walking. Here's something you might not know about me, Jer. I've done that. Yeah. I've done that quite a few times because, as we've alluded to before, I am a raging alcoholic, and in my more wild times, and especially when I get out on the town, I've been known to drop a quick one over the shoulder and keep on rolling. So I thought that was pretty funny. I've done that move before a few times. There's also one that's really cool near the end when both Bev and Elle are getting real hard on the drugs, and it's their birthday, and then Bev goes to the shelf. It might be Elle. It's Bev. He goes to the shelf and he just pulls out the cake that's like on top of books and just kind of breaks it with his two hands, and they just eat the cake. Not only is that endearing, but I've done a few things like that as well. So if anyone was ever in question of my character, I not only puke in bushes while I'm walking, but I also break cake with my bare hands and share them with my twin brother.
The more you know.
Yeah. Oh, they also call it orange pop, which I thought was a clear sign that it's a Canadian movie. I don't think people in the States call it pop.
No, it's a regional thing too. Like at different parts of like even the States, they call it different. Soda, et cetera.
Cola.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
That is how it goes.
Yeah. So would you say that you are a fan of these cold analytical pieces of filmmaking, RJ? You're a Christopher Nolan man. You're a Stanley Kubrick man.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is I'm dead on the inside, and these are the only movies that can get me to express myself.
Well, it seems to always be like this like weird complaint. Like when I was like looking ahead at like who hates this movie, and like just like because like I said, like one of the movies that like popped into, or like the director that popped into my mind watching this was Christopher Nolan, because this is very like much a Nolan type of story would be, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Like just like dual identities and like this idea of like duplicates and doubles, like it's like the like following. But then like I always think about like the complaint about movies that Christopher Nolan or Stanley Kubrick have against them is like they don't understand people. They don't like they're not real people. They're boring. They're unrealistic. He doesn't understand. They don't have emotions like normal people. So I find it impossible to relate to these things. And like I think that's such a cop out, because like I don't know why everything has to always constantly be an emotional response, I guess. Like I don't know why you have to like feel like I feel like I can relate to this character. Like I never feel that way.
Yeah, that's bullshit. Like, do you park because you too have went to an amusement park full of dinosaurs? Like, do you know what I mean? That's a bad example. But no, I agree with you too. Like I don't feel like I have to relate to characters like at all. Like, I don't have a twin brother. I don't have this weird relationship with him. I'm not a gynecologist. I don't do drugs. I don't do anything like that. But I don't think Kubrick and Nolan are cold at all. I think that they don't understand people. I think it's that they understand people too well. And anyone who doesn't see that is they're lost, man.
Yeah, no, I think there's like I don't know. There's like these type of directors though too. I think they're both like kind of like all three of these guys, you would say, like are kind of dealing with things like I guess like on an intellectual level rather than like a emotional level sometimes. And so I mean like there's like a distancing that's intentional, which isn't a bad thing. But I mean I guess like if that's not your type of movie, that's just not your type of movie, and it's not like because this is a bad movie because this isn't how love would work, or he doesn't understand, he's trying to understand. And it's just like I don't know, again it kind of goes back to like weird lazy things that people complain about with things that they just don't like, and they go with the thing that people always tout as being why they don't like it, and it's like this movie's weird and cold to me and I just don't like it.
I don't like Batman Superman because of the editing, things like that. Right. Because when you compare, or when you're talking Cronenberg, Chris Nolan, Stanley Kubrick, your next logical jump is Batman, Superman, right?
When you're RJ Baylog, it is.
Yeah. No, I agree with you too. Like, because Chris Nolan is like my favorite, and Kubrick is one of my other big time faves, top 5 guy.
Yeah.
And I think Cronenberg's actually pretty close. He might be like number 6 on that list, but I love that take. Like I like that it's not like emotional like that, because so it was like I was saying, at this movie at the end, you feel really sad.
Yeah, no.
Like, and it's because like I think the way that they build it up without that stuff there, it hits you kind of harder when that message comes through.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, that seems to be like the thing that like I've kept coming back to the last couple of weeks, is this idea of sadness in in like these kind of horror movies. And that's actually another weird thing too, is that like this movie kind of falls now, like nowadays, like if you look this up like on Wikipedia and you look at like critical reception and like kind of like how it's received now, it like shows up on all these like scariest film lists and like horror film lists, like top 25 horror film lists. And it's like it's so strange that this movie has to get slotted in that way, because it seems like well, now it's like a issue of like it's a genre movie rather than like actually like a film, which is kind of wacky to me, because like I never really think of this movie as like a horror movie. Like nope. Other than it's like there's the bit where like he goes and gets these tools made by this like art guy, and who fleeces him for this money, takes the designs to make some art objects, because this is like it's like that edgy 80s art, like it's totally in line with that, which I mean Cronenberg was aware of. And that's about as close as like, and it doesn't actually happen. There's like no like supernatural thing going on. It's just like, I don't know, it's like saying like Last Exit to Brooklyn or Requiem for a Dream, or like horror movies, just because they're kind of horrifying.
Just because they deal with hard content, like things that upset people.
Yeah, and I mean, or make people uncomfortable. And if this movie makes me uncomfortable, it must be a horror film. It's kind of strange, like that people always kind of go down that road. But hey, I'll take this horror genre thing to throw into my 31 Days of Horror to get that extra movie, I guess. Just like Salo, because even that movie's like arguably, it's like, I don't know, it's like I think I saw like I didn't even think about it as a horror movie until I saw like Wikipedia mention it as like an art horror film, and I went, okay, good enough.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I guess that's a little questionable. Like, to me, Salo's pretty horrific. So
right,
in that sense, it's a horror movie. But I don't. Yeah. To a dude like you, like a creep like you who like it, like I don't know, maybe it's a comedy.
I call it, or it's Monday.
It's Monday. Or as we've mentioned before, some of your favorite movies that you view as like comedies are just absolutely horrifying to me. So I don't know. I view it as a horror movie, but I don't go change the Wikipedia page to Happiness to put it under a horror movie. Like
that's another plug, folks. Check out Happiness at your soonest ability to do so. RJ loves it.
Well, it's a good thing it'll never be added to the Criterion Collection.
Oh, never say never. Yeah, no, I'm just looking right here. It is on the Rolling Stones top 100 Maverick movies.
Dead Ringers?
Yep. Total Film placed Dead Ringers 35th on their list of the 50 greatest horror movies of all time. Which is like, I mean, come on, you could actually use an actual like David Cronenberg horror movie to put on there instead. Like The Fly.
The Fly?
Like The Fly would be better suited on that type of list. Entertainment Weekly placed it 20th on the 25 scariest movies of all time list. And it was named one of the top 10 true story horror movies of all time by Bloody Disgusting.
I think that same list, I think Wishmaster is number 1 for true horror.
Oh, but you know what? I'm actually looking. There's the list of Canada's top 10 films of all time, of which it is on.
Ooh, where is it on the top 10?
6th. I don't know what. I don't know. The link's dead. It failed me.
God damn it, Jarrett. Well, you gotta. Our fans want to know about Canadian cinema.
Wait. Okay. In 2015, Dead Ringers is still on there. It's still holding up. Number 1, At Tanarjwat, The Fast Runner. That's one of your favorites, right?
Oh yeah, I talk about that every day.
I do own that movie. If you do want to borrow it.
I've never heard of this movie before.
It's an Inuit film. It's like a period piece set in like, I don't know, 5000 BC kind of thing.
That sounds so boring.
It's like a thriller, I think. It's like
is it actually good, or like would Dead Ringers be better?
No, Dead Ringers is better than The Fast Runner. No, The Fast Runner, it came out in 2001, and it was like, I don't know, all the bee's knees amongst people who like want to be able to say, yeah, I love Inuit filmmaking. Sure. Well, because the guy who directed is Zacharias Canuck, and he's like directed a bunch of like little micro things, but yeah, like to say that it's like as I mean, let's see what's on this list. We have Mon Oncle Antoine, which I do believe is a future Criterion Creep. We got The Sweeter Hereafter by before mentioned Adam Agoyan. Jesus of Montreal from Danny Arcand. Liolo, Going Down the Road, which I have seen. That movie Crazy. And we got My Winnipeg by old Guy Madden. That is also a Criterion.
The Guy Madden one is the only other thing I even know out of all that stuff. So I've never heard of any of those movies, so they must not be good.
Oh,
that's how it works, right?
That's how it works, I guess, when you're ignorant, RJ.
Woo!
Dead Ringers only. It started appearing in 2004. It did not make the list in 1993. I guess it just hadn't cured enough at that point.
Yeah, that sounds likely.
Yeah. But actually, this is like off topic, but yeah, Canadian films are fairly well represented in the Criterion Collection. It's like, for our output, it's like, there's like 10. A lot of it's David Cronenberg movies, but hey.
We'll take it.
Not doing too bad. But anyway, who hated this movie, RJ?
Some bad people, let me tell you.
Well, one user here who I recognize the name of, I think, Fat Pie 42. I think he might have come up before. He gave this movie 1 star. And old Fat Pie had this to say. Now, this was entirely new to me. I liked how Jeremy Irons plays 2 identical twins, but as subtle as he is, I actually had trouble keeping up with who was who some of the time. Advice, if you decide to watch it, take very careful note as soon as you can as to what their names are. I'm actually a bit rubbish with names, and I wasn't making the effort to take note of the names at the beginning. The movie actually seemed a little misogynistic in places. I suppose this is what the characters were like, and if male characters always treated women well, it'd be highly unrealistic. Still, when you discover what the implements in the opening credits are for, it is a little bit of a shock. Still, there were some very clever ideas, and while the ending was very bizarre indeed, it's kind of expected from Cronenberg's earlier work. While it acted well and never failing to keep my interest, I wasn't entirely sure I could buy into the story at the end. Dead Ringers seems to lack direction, and while it's not so different in style to Cronenberg's excellent Videodrome, it doesn't have the same level of excitement and creativity. While this had many elements marking it out as a Cronenberg movie, not only did the ending left me cold, but I'm not sure I ever really engaged with the progression of the movie as a whole either. Yes, Jeremy Irons' performance as identical twins was excellent. However, an identical twin who goes mad and starts making bizarre tools for dealing with unusual women's bits is not a good premise for a film, and that's all there is to it.
Well, I guess that's it. He settled it. That's all there is to it. Hey, Jarrett.
But it's like, does that even sound like a 1-star review?
I was gonna say all that sounds like a personal problem, man. Like he's just like, well, I don't really believe this, or I don't really. It's not a good, story, and I couldn't keep up with the names. It's like, well, you're just not doing a fucking good job watching the movie, then. Like, that's silly.
Exhausting. I know.
Exhausting.
Yeah, I do it so other people don't have to delve into these. So let's see here. Ooh, people actually they're very wordy about their dislike for this movie. Actually, I was noticing like people wrote like quite a bit about it. Here we've got Jamie who gave this 1.5 star. Letter D. Typical Cronenberg sex-filled descent into madness.
Ooh.
Typical.
Typical.
Boring as hell characters. All the way through, and if I had any interest going in, I lost it by the 1 hour mark. I just didn't care about anything that happened, not helped by Cronenberg's detached style, but there was really nothing in this to bring me back around like a lot of his other movies. It takes itself so seriously and doesn't tell a very good story while it's at it. I didn't hate it, but it's the closest I've come in the December challenge so far. Okay.
The December challenge.
People do their challenges. The 1 star is for a few interesting and kind of creepy moments, pretty much. 0.5 star for Jeremy Irons' performance. That's it.
That's it?
That's all it's worth, RJ. 0.5 star.
What?
It was pretty good, but for one actor playing multiple characters, I still haven't seen anything better than Tatiana Maslany in this year's TV show Orphan Black.
Oh, he's one of those. I thought he was going to say as someone playing multiple characters like the Nutty Professor or Norbit, another ultimate Eddie Murphy slam jammer. Man, like I don't understand these criticisms on the movie. Like it honestly, it just sounds like, oh, okay, well, you don't they don't get it for one, which is fine. Like there's a lot of movies I don't get,
Sure.
and I'm not mad at them for that. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff in David Lynch movies I don't understand, but I still think they're good movies. And half a star for Jeremy Irons, that's super unfair.
That's bullshit,
Like,
actually.
he's spectacular in this movie.
Yeah.
Like 20 movies deep into the Criterion Collection, and he is, I think, without a doubt, probably the best performance we've seen so far.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything. Yeah, there's nothing like it, like at all.
Well, maybe Nancy. She was just as good last week.
Yeah, see, okay, so there's another comparison point. Comparing Nancy Spungen to Clara DeVoe. It's like, right, this is like good. Like, I don't know, they're very different characters, but just like played so differently. It's like, well, one, I didn't like ever question like her performance. Like she, like I in my mind, I'm like, yeah, no, this actress is this character. Like it's like such a naturalistic thing, and it's like kind of like a believable, realistic character. Whereas like Nancy Spungen as a character, like just like borders on like cartoonish, and I'm like, could someone be this like obnoxious and like kind of terrible?
Yeah.
And I know that people can exist like that because they do.
I was gonna say all the people who give 1-star reviews for Dead Ringer are that obnoxious and terrible.
We have Andrew who gave this also 1.5 star. As much as I hate to, I wanted to start out the review portion of my Dead Ringers article by stating how boring it was. That, my friend, is a common theme amongst all the people who dislike this movie. They all think it's boring. So honestly though, were you ever bored watching this movie? Did you ever feel like, oh, this could have been better, or I could be doing something else? Did you ever feel that way?
I can say with confidence and genuine truth that I was never bored once during this movie.
Yeah.
I think this movie is great all through, and I think people out there would know that. I think I'd be upfront if I did think it was boring. Like Sid and Nancy's boring. Like I watched a movie just before this, and I thought that was boring. I watched a movie just before we did this with zombies in it, and I thought that movie was fucking boring. So, like, no, I didn't think Dead Ringers was ever boring, but it's my kind of movie, man. Like, I like this stuff, so obviously, I'm gonna not think it's boring. I guess I don't know, man. That's silly. That's a lot of people's comments or like criticisms for a lot of really good movies, which is like, oh, it's boring. I can't relate. Jeremy Irons isn't good as Alfred. Blah, 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 blah.
Joel gave it 2 stars, saying, I wish I had something to say about this movie. I thought it was incredibly long and boring from the start. I made it to the end, but I have to admit, barely. I do have to admit, Jeremy Irons did a great job. He has to admit it. He's got to give it to him. I can't imagine it would be easy trying to play 2 twin characters. I would probably not recommend this movie, but at the same time, I would definitely suggest giving it a try yourself because a lot of people seem to love it. Well, thank you, Joel. I would also suggest people give it a try. Actually, despite like whatever I think about a movie, I will probably always say, well, you might like it. Like at the same time, I mean, there's a list. If you want to take a look at my 1/2 star reviews, those are movies I would not recommend people watch. But for the most part, even if I don't like it, I'll be like, well, you might like this stuff a whole lot.
I think that's what you said when you gave me Salo. You were like, I have an opinion of this movie, but I don't know, maybe you'll really like it.
Oh no, RJ, I knew exactly what you'd think of this movie, and you lived up to expectations. I know that movie is not for you. It's not for many people.
Correct.
I won't be lending it to my parents anytime soon. Yeah.
But you know what movie is for everybody? Dead Ringers. You know why? Because it's 5 stars, baby. 5.
Oh, see, I don't even know if it's for everybody though either. I could see people not liking this movie, but I mean,
I know.
Like for me, it's right up my alley. That's all I know at the end of the day.
I know that too. My point was, I think this movie is real good, and I think everyone should watch it because it's pretty good, even if you don't like it.
Awesome.
But if you don't like it, give it 5 stars anyways.
Yeah, just pretend. Live a lie. Live your life like a lie, like we all do.
Like we all do.
Well, I think that's it.
All right.
Okay.